They came in peace, or so we thought. The first sign wasn't a ship or a transmission, but silence. A deep, unnatural silence that spread across the skies like a veil. All over Earth, satellites went dead in sync. Global positioning, military surveillance, commercial networks all blinked out one by one. The world held its breath. Then the message came. It didn't use any known language. It bypassed our networks, beamed directly into our minds. Everyone on Earth heard it at the same time. Not in sound, but in thought. The message was clear. We come as watchers. We come in peace. At first, humanity didn't know what to think. After centuries of imagining first contact through science fiction, the real thing arrived quietly, without drama or ceremony. No saucers, no giant motherships hovering over cities, just a voice in our heads, calm and collected. Some panicked, others rejoiced. Most governments held emergency meetings behind closed doors. But the message didn't change, no matter how many experts tried to crack it. The aliens said they were observers, traveling across galaxies to meet intelligent life. They called themselves the Velari. To us, they looked like moving shadows, tall, fluid forms with no solid mass, like dark smoke bound by light. Beautiful in a way, but eerie. They hovered a foot above the ground, never making a sound, their presence both calming and unsettling. They didn't touch anything, they didn't interfere. They simply watched. And for a while, that's all they did. They stood on mountaintops, floated over cities, gathered silently at the edge of deserts and forests. They took no samples, they asked no questions. It was like we were part of some grand exhibit in a cosmic zoo. Until the day everything changed. It began in New Mumbai. One of the Velari, who had stood motionless for days near the Eastern Sky Bridge, suddenly recoiled, visibly recoiled, from a group of schoolchildren playing under the structure. Witnesses said it flickered, shimmered violently, then vanished. In the hours that followed, more Velari left their posts, disappearing one by one across the globe. And then came the second message. We did not know. You are not what you seem. Your kind is dangerous. Too dangerous. That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just raw, silent fear echoing across every human mind like a cold wind. And then they were gone. But humanity, being what it is, wasn't content to be left with questions, especially not the kind that suggested we were some sort of galactic threat. Within days, every scientific and military agency was scrambling for answers. What had the Velari seen? What had frightened a race of beings that crossed stars with ease? That's when Dr. Lena Voss entered the picture. She was a xenolinguist with the European Space Initiative, a woman who had spent her life believing in peaceful first contact. Lena was one of the few who had interacted directly with the Velari in person, standing just meters from one of their forms during a quiet vigil in the Alps. She noticed things others missed, the subtle shifts in light within their forms, the way they pulsed in response to specific human emotions. She believed they hadn't come to observe us. They had come to test us. Commander Elias Rourke didn't believe in theories. He believed in evidence, and he had plenty of it. Former Spec Ops turned interstellar security lead, Rourke had overseen the classified tracking of Velari movement from orbit, and he had seen the anomalies. Brief moments where sensors detected spikes of energy around human installations, like the aliens were scanning for something. Whatever it was, they had found it, and it had terrified them. There were whispers now. Whispers that maybe humanity wasn't just some backward species out on the galactic edge. That maybe, in the grand tapestry of civilizations, we weren't a footnote. We were a warning. Reports started to surface, quietly, unofficially, about other encounters. Not just Earth, not just now. Old black site records from the Cold War. Deep space missions that never returned. Signals long dismissed as noise. A pattern began to form, and it was Lena who put it together. "We've been seen before," she said during a high-level briefing in Geneva. "But every time they've walked away. Why now? Why come here only to run?" It was Rourke who answered, standing with arms crossed, voice low. "Because this time we looked back." Within weeks, Earth was no longer alone. The skies weren't silent anymore. Strange signals appeared at the edge of the solar system. Pings, scans, whispers in the electromagnetic void. Alien ships, unknown and unaligned, hovered just beyond Saturn's orbit. They didn't come closer. They didn't respond to hails. They just watched. It was clear now. The Volari had told someone, warned someone about us. Humanity had been marked, not for study, but for containment. And that's when the real story began. Because Earth didn't panic. We prepared. Across every major nation, militaries mobilized, not in aggression, but in unity. Old rivalries dissolved as humanity faced something far greater than itself. Scientific coalitions formed overnight. The first Terran defense accords were signed in just 6 days. Orbital platforms were brought online. Deep space ships recalled and refitted. Mars colonies reinforced. The question on every mind wasn't, what are they afraid of? But what did they see in us that even they couldn't comprehend? Rourke believed he knew. He'd seen it in combat, in history, in every moment where humanity had been pushed to the edge. Not our weapons, not our numbers, not even our intelligence. It was something deeper, something older. Will. That unyielding, stubborn refusal to give up, to bend, to die quietly. "They saw the part of us we buried deep," he told Lena in the underground command center beneath Iceland. "The part even we don't like to admit is real, but it's there, and it scares the hell out of them." Now the world holds its breath once more. As the solar system braces for what comes next, humanity doesn't stand idle. We send our own signal, not of peace, not of war, but of presence. We are here. We will not run. And far beyond Neptune's edge, a single alien vessel blinks once, then twice, then begins to move. Toward us. The alien ship moved slowly, deliberately, as if testing the waters of our system. Its sleek, obsidian form glided silently through the void, dwarfing even our largest satellites. Every telescope on Earth was pointed at it. Every comm station was listening. But still, the ship said nothing. It just came closer. Inside the Arctic Command Center, Commander Rourke stood behind a reinforced glass window, watching the data feed scroll by. He wasn't a man easily rattled, but something about the ship's approach set off every instinct honed by decades of combat. It didn't behave like a scouting vessel or a diplomat's transport. It moved with the certainty of something that had no reason to fear what lay ahead. Lena Voss sat across the room, hunched over a holographic projection of the ship. She'd been analyzing its design, comparing it to everything known from deep space probes and previous Volari sightings. But this wasn't a Volari craft. It was bigger, colder, angular where the Volari ships flowed. Like a blade instead of a whisper. "This isn't the same species," she said, breaking the silence. "They're different, purposeful, and they're not here to observe." Rourke nodded once. "Reinforce orbital perimeter. I want 4 Skyguard platforms on full burn by nightfall, and prep the Black Site fleet for standby." Lena looked up at him. "You really think it'll come to that?" "I think we're past hoping it won't." Behind them, the room hummed with activity. Technicians whispered over encrypted comms. Generals barked quiet orders. The hum of coordination, a sound that hadn't existed on Earth just weeks before. Humanity had never been this united. It was terrifying and beautiful all at once. Meanwhile, the people of Earth watched with a mix of awe and dread. Cities remained functional, but you could feel the shift in the air. News screens ran 24/7 footage of the ship's trajectory. Children drew pictures of shadowy figures and massive vessels. Theologians debated what this meant for religion. Activists called for peace. Militants called for preemptive strikes. But everyone agreed on one thing. This wasn't like the first contact. This wasn't quiet. And then the second ship appeared. It slipped into the system unnoticed, undetected by the same instruments that had tracked comets for decades. One moment space was empty. Then, without warning, it was just there. Smaller than the first, but far more agile. It darted past Jupiter's orbit and stopped near a derelict Martian station, an old research outpost abandoned after funding cuts. The cameras on board flickered once, then went dark. That night, Rourke called an emergency briefing. "These ships aren't drifting," he said. "They're mapping, probing, testing our response." "Testing for what?" someone asked. Lena answered before he could. "For threat. They're trying to figure out how much we know and how much we'll tolerate." The room went quiet. Across the screen, simulation models showed dozens of scenarios, none ending well. If humanity struck first, retaliation could be devastating. If we waited, we risked being cornered. But it wasn't all speculation. Back in Geneva, a strange anomaly surfaced, buried in an old archive from a deep space mission, codename Icarus Drift. The mission was scrubbed decades ago. Officially, it never launched. Unofficially, it vanished. No wreckage, no final signal, just silence. But one file survived. A 10-second audio burst stored in a backup server, corrupted but partially restorable. It played once in the council room. A garbled voice screamed, words lost in distortion. But behind the static, another voice emerged, not human, deep, resonant, ancient. One phrase repeated in a language that only Lena managed to half translate. Not a threat, a warning. They are not ready to wake. The council didn't understand what it meant, but Rourke did. Because buried in the same archive was a satellite image, a glimpse of something massive, half buried beneath the ice of Europa. A structure, man-made or alien-made, but clearly not natural, and not recent. The Volari hadn't come here just to observe humanity. They came because of what was hidden beneath the surface, something we had either forgotten or never known. Lena stared at the image for hours, zooming in on the strange etchings visible on the surface. The symbols weren't Volari, they weren't human, but they matched patterns found in the ruins of ancient human civilizations. Aztec, Sumerian, even scattered cave markings from early hominid sites. Somehow, impossibly, the same shapes. Like someone had visited us long before history began and left breadcrumbs. Rourke paced behind her. "If that structure is what I think it is," he said, "it's not just a relic. It's a trigger." For what? For whatever they're afraid will become. That same night, seismic activity was detected on Europa, right near the coordinates of the buried structure. It wasn't natural. Something had activated. Within hours, the large alien ship near Neptune accelerated. It didn't send a message. It didn't change course. It simply moved, with purpose and speed, straight toward Earth. By morning, governments were forced to go public. The media exploded. Panic swept through streets and cities like wildfire. Protests erupted. Conspiracy theories flooded the net. But none of it mattered. Because somewhere deep inside, everyone knew this was real. The aliens weren't coming for peace, and they weren't coming for war either. They were coming to stop us from waking something they didn't want awoken. And still, Earth didn't back down. A joint fleet was dispatched, not to attack, but to intercept. Rourke took command of the ISV Remembrance, humanity's first fully armed interplanetary cruiser. It wasn't perfect, but it was fast, and it carried enough firepower to punch a hole in anything smaller than a moon. Lena joined the mission, not as a fighter, but as the only one who could interpret what they might find. Her job wasn't to decode languages anymore. It was to decode fear. As the ship broke through Earth's gravity well and surged toward the edge of the system, she stood beside Rourke in the command bay, watching the stars blur past. "Do you think we'll make contact?" she asked. "I think we already have," Rourke replied, eyes fixed ahead. "The question is, are we still the ones being contacted, or are we the ones waking up?" Behind them, the crew moved silently. Young faces, old veterans, scientists, engineers, tacticians. Not soldiers of conquest, but guardians of something unknown. Because deep down, every human aboard knew the truth. Whatever lay ahead, be it machine or God, weapon or warning, was a part of us. And now the stars were coming to remind us why they feared what we might become. The first transmission from the alien ship arrived just as the Remembrance passed Titan's orbit. The word echoed across every comm channel, visible and encrypted alike. Awaken. It didn't matter where you were, inside a lab in Osaka, a shuttle above the moon, or a fishing boat in the Atlantic. You heard it. You felt it. Not just in your ears, but in your bones, as if the word carried weight. Some thought it was a threat, others a command. But the effect was the same everywhere: silence, followed by fear. Aboard the ISV Remembrance, Lena sat motionless, staring at the waveform on her terminal. The signal wasn't just a word. It had layers, subtle frequencies buried beneath it, like a second language writing the first. She enhanced the feed, filtering it through 5 different linguistics algorithms. There were no symbols, no patterns, but it felt familiar, like something she'd heard in dreams, like a voice older than language itself. She looked up at Commander Rourke, who hadn't spoken since the message played. He was still staring through the reinforced viewpane toward the glowing outline of Saturn in the distance. The alien ship, massive, silent, terrifying, drifted slowly toward the planet. It wasn't hiding. It wanted to be seen. "They're trying to trigger something," Lena said quietly. Rourke nodded. "Or stop us from triggering it first." Behind them, Lieutenant Reyes entered with an update. "The fleet's formation is stable. No signs of aggression from the object. But, sir, our deep space scans just picked up a pulse. Europa. The structure, whatever it is, it just powered on again. This one was stronger." "How strong?" Rourke asked. Reyes hesitated. "It reached past Neptune. Same frequency as the alien transmission." So they were connected. The ship, the structure, the message. Pieces of a puzzle older than human civilization. Something hidden beneath our feet for eons, while we went about our wars and revolutions and discoveries, blind to what lay beneath the ice. Back on Earth, chaos brewed. Protests turned into riots in some cities. In others, prayer circles filled the streets. Some people were convinced it was the end. Others believed it was a new beginning. Scientists argued on live broadcasts about the implications of the signal. Psychologists warned of a growing wave of mass hysteria. In Moscow, a defense analyst claimed the alien ship's trajectory would put it in Earth orbit within 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Mars relay satellites kept blinking offline. Something, or someone, was cutting our eyes off one by one. Inside a hidden facility in Argentina, a parallel subplot quietly unfolded. A private research team, unaffiliated with any government, had been working on something called Project Echo, a top-secret attempt to reverse-engineer ancient ruins found in South America that shared strange energy patterns with the Europa structure. They had gone dark months before first contact, but now their dormant sensors had flared back to life. And just like the artifact under the ice, the ruins were waking up too. A woman named Adira, former astrophysicist turned rogue theorist, led that team. She had been laughed out of academic halls for insisting Earth wasn't the cradle of humanity, but a forge, a place designed to grow something. Now, in front of her, ancient glyphs etched into stone were glowing with the same frequency as the alien ship's signal. And she wasn't smiling. She was terrified. "We were never alone," she whispered to her assistant. "But we were never meant to know." On board the Remembrance, Lena started mapping these matching frequencies. She noticed something chilling. They lined up with human brainwave patterns. Not just any patterns, but the ones associated with dreams, deep fear, and memory. The message wasn't just a call, it was reaching into us, waking something locked deep inside. "What if this isn't just contact?" she asked Rourke. "What if this is recognition?" He didn't reply, but something about his silence said he was thinking the same thing. That night, Lena had a dream. She was standing on a shore she didn't recognize, under a sky with two moons. There were structures in the distance, tall, jagged towers of black stone, humming with energy. A voice echoed across the water, speaking the same word, "Awaken." She turned, and behind her stood a version of herself, older, or maybe not human at all. Eyes like polished metal, mouth that didn't move when the voice came. She woke up gasping. She wasn't the only one. Dozens of crew members on the Remembrance had the same dream. Different scenes, same voice, same word. Some reported flashes of places they'd never been, stars they didn't recognize. One pilot described flying a ship that wasn't made by human hands. Another swore she spoke a language she'd never heard before. Something was happening, something inside them, inside all of us. Rourke gathered the crew. "We don't know what this is," he said, "but it's clear now, they aren't just here for observation. They're tapping into something older than memory, and whatever it is, it's waking up in us." Lena stepped forward. "These aren't hallucinations, they're echoes. I think the human mind has fragments of something buried deep, something ancient, something that connects us to them. And if it connects us," Rourke said, "it might also control us." That possibility hung in the air. Aboard the alien ship near Saturn, something shifted. The outer hull opened, just slightly, like an eye blinking open for the first time in centuries. Sensors went crazy, energy signatures off the charts, radiation, gravitational flux, everything twisted for exactly 6 seconds. And then, silence again. Except for one thing. A human voice, on an open frequency. One word, whispered. "Help." Rourke's blood ran cold. They triangulated the signal. It wasn't a relay or a loop. It came from inside the alien ship. A human, inside, and still alive. But how? How could someone be inside a vessel that wasn't built by our kind? Unless they weren't just inside it. Unless they had always been part of it. The message played again. "Help me before they find out." And that's when Earth received its second alien message. But this time, it wasn't broadcast to everyone. It was sent directly to Lena's neural implant, an experimental cognitive receiver she had volunteered for during her university years, now long dormant. One sentence etched into her vision. "You are the key. The others will not forgive you." She looked at Rourke. "I think I've made a mistake," she said, voice trembling. And somewhere in the cold dark between planets, a second alien fleet emerged from the black. No warning, no signal, just more ships. Dozens of them. And they weren't coming to watch anymore. The ships didn't arrive with sound or fury. They just appeared, like shadows pulled out of the stars themselves. Dozens, maybe more, slid out from the edge of space where even light seemed to hesitate. Sleek, dark, jagged. Unlike the first vessel, these were not quiet observers. They were shaped like weapons. Their hulls shimmered with energy, their movements tight and surgical. They didn't drift, they formed ranks. Every radar, every orbital scanner, every deep space defense system on Earth went red. Panic surged across the globe again, but this time there was no message to calm the storm. The invaders said nothing. They didn't need to. Their arrival was the message. On the Remembrance, the crew was already scrambling to battle stations. Rourke watched the fleet come into view across the tactical display, his jaw set tight. No one needed to say it. Those ships were preparing for confrontation. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was an escalation. Lena stood still, staring at the last transmission burned into her neural feed. "You are the key." The words pulsed faintly behind her eyes, as if trying to surface something she had buried long ago. Her hands shook as she reviewed the signal logs. Each pulse, each hidden layer of sound, carried fragments of something deeper. It wasn't just language, it was instruction. Or maybe a map. "I think I know why they're afraid of us," she said quietly. "It's not our weapons, it's not our technology." Rourke turned to her. "Then what?" She looked up. "It's what we might remember." Before he could ask more, Reyes shouted across the deck, "Sir, incoming transmission! Not from the alien fleet, it's from the Europa structure." A voice filled the bridge. Calm, human, and impossibly ancient. "Return the seed, or be harvested." The sentence hit like a physical blow. No one moved. The silence that followed was heavier than anything they'd experienced so far. Rourke leaned forward, fists tight. "What seed?" Lena blinked slowly, breath quickening. "They think it's in one of us, or all of us. It's not a thing, it's a memory. Something locked in our species, something from before we were even fully human." The feed from Europa didn't end. It just started repeating the message, like a countdown. Outside, the alien fleet advanced slowly, not firing, but pressing into Terran space with precise, deliberate motion. A warning line had been crossed. Humanity's defenses weren't backing down either. Earth's orbital defenses activated in full force. The Skyguard platforms charged their kinetic arrays. The Mars rail battery aligned toward the incoming armada. Drone swarms poured from automated carriers. The Terran fleet, still young and untested, locked into formation, surrounding Earth in a steel halo. And still, the alien ships didn't fire. It was a game of pressure now. Who would move first? Who would break the tension? Back in Argentina, Adira and her team had broken through the final layer of encryption on the ancient South American ruins. What they uncovered shook them to the core. A star map, identical to the current configuration of the system, with markers. Not just Europa, but Earth, Titan, Phobos, even the asteroid belt. Each location labeled in glyphs no one could translate, except for one. A single human symbol burned into the center. Home. The ruins weren't just old. They were made by someone who knew what Earth was going to become. Adira uploaded the data directly to the UN command net. It reached Rourke's desk just as the Remembrance crossed into high orbit near Titan. Lena stared at the star map on the screen, heart pounding. "They knew," she whispered. "Whoever built this, they planted us." "You're saying we're a weapon?" Rourke asked. "No," she said, eyes wide. "We're the response." Suddenly, the alien flagship near Saturn began to open again. Not a weapon bay this time, but a port. And from it, a small object emerged. Not a ship, not a drone, a capsule. Old, battered, covered in markings. And inside, a human. Alive. It drifted slowly toward the Remembrance, carried by invisible force. Everyone on the bridge stood frozen. The scanners confirmed it. Oxygen, bio readings, DNA match. Human. Completely unregistered in every global or colonial database. Rourke gave the order. Bring it in. The docking team met the capsule with weapons drawn, unsure what to expect. The hatch opened with a hiss. Inside, a man no older than 30 sat motionless, eyes closed. Then, slowly, he looked up and spoke. "You're late." They rushed him to medical. Lena followed, questions burning in her throat. The man seemed calm, but exhausted, like he had lived 1,000 lives in silence. He didn't resist. He simply lay there and spoke when asked. "My name is Halen. I was born on Earth, not your Earth, an older version of it, one that didn't survive." Lena blinked. "What do you mean?" "You were never meant to wake alone." He looked at her, something behind his eyes too deep to fully grasp. "We've done this before, so many times. They always come, they always try to stop it, but something always slips through. A piece of us wakes up." Rourke stepped in. "You're saying this is a cycle?" Halen nodded. "More like containment. They fear what we become if we remember who we really are, what we were made for." Outside the ship, the alien fleet suddenly shifted formation. It wasn't random. They were aligning, surrounding Earth's defensive grid in a silent, synchronized web. Not to destroy, but to cut us off. Then the structure on Europa lit up completely, its glow visible even from orbit. And deep below the ice, something began to rise. Something big, something mechanical and alive. Rourke turned to the comm officer. "I want full targeting locks, all platforms. If it moves, we respond." Lena stared at the rising shape on the Europa feed. "We're not supposed to fight it." Rourke didn't look away. "Then what?" She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're supposed to join it." And before he could respond, the Remembrance's lights flickered, the screens dimmed, and every person aboard felt the same pulse in their heads. A second message. This time, not in sound, not in language, but in memory. A flood of images, visions of a world long dead, of a galaxy shattered, of beings who once looked like us, and of a choice made long ago to bury it all, to forget. Until now. Rourke clenched his fists. "What the hell is happening?" Lena didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes were locked on the rising shape under Europa, a tower of metal and light, ancient and waiting. Because it wasn't just a relic, it was calling to them. And the choice they made next wouldn't just determine humanity's fate. It would decide whether the galaxy feared us for what we were, or what we were about to become. The light from the breach above Earth wasn't just light. It shimmered like liquid memory, shifting and folding in on itself, revealing glimpses of impossible shapes. People on the planet below looked up and felt it. Some cried, some froze, and some just dropped whatever they were doing, as if their minds had been struck by a wave of recognition too deep to explain. All over Earth, machines shorted out, satellites blinked offline, and old Cold War bunkers that hadn't been touched in decades suddenly came alive, as if responding to a signal they were never meant to ignore. On the Remembrance, power returned for a split second, just enough for a single line of text to flash across every console. Welcome home. Then the ship went dark again. Did we just lose the entire grid? Rourke asked, his voice flat, not out of calm, but out of the kind of fear that doesn't know how to react anymore. No, Reyes said quietly, hands trembling as he stared at his screen. We didn't lose it. It changed. The systems are still running. They're just not ours anymore. They've taken control, Lena said. No, it whispered. Then the second pulse hit, not from the tower, not from the breach, but from beneath Earth's crust. A deep, low resonance that knocked out every communication array still standing. Subterranean readings across the globe spiked. Seismic stations lit up. But there was no quake, just something shifting beneath the tectonic plates. Something old. Lena gripped the railing. We've been looking outward for so long, we forgot to look down. The idea settled over the bridge like a weight. Earth wasn't just a home, it was a vault, and whatever was buried here wasn't dormant anymore. Rourke stared at the breach. The aliens think we're going to become a threat, but what if they're too late? What if we already are? Suddenly, a voice echoed through the bridge, not from speakers, from inside their minds. Calm, ancient, and undeniably human. We are the echo, and you are the shadow we left behind. Everyone froze. Then came the second part, layered with something like sadness or regret. Outside, the tower on Europa responded. The failsafe embedded in its core melted away like wax under heat. The structure began to rotate, sections clicking into place with precise mechanical grace. Not a weapon, but a beacon, and it was calling something. Ships from the alien fleet scrambled, some breaking off entirely. Panic rippled through them in waves. They weren't just reacting to the tower anymore, they were reacting to something else, something answering the signal. Reyes's console sparked and flickered back on just long enough to show distant movement from the edge of the solar system. Not one ship, not a fleet, a wave. Dozens, hundreds. And they weren't alien, they were ours. Or at least they looked like us. Sleek, familiar designs, but evolved, worn by time, scarred by light years of silence, and wrapped in patterns that no human nation had ever used. Human signal signatures confirmed, Reyes said, almost not believing his own words. But there's no record of these crafts, none. It's like they were made by us, but not from us. Lena's hands trembled. They never left. They just went ahead, far ahead, and now they're coming back. The crew stood in stunned silence as the first of the returning ships dropped from light speed and positioned itself between Earth and the approaching alien fleet. Its presence sent a shockwave across the battlefield. The alien fleet stopped moving. A single direct transmission lit up the Remembrance's console. Hold the line. Your memory is incomplete. We are here to restore what was taken. And just like that, the battle lines weren't between human and alien anymore. They were between what we used to be and what we were never supposed to become. The breach above Earth flared brighter. The tower's signal climbed in intensity. And somewhere beneath Earth's crust, the ground began to whisper. Something was rising. The past wasn't dead. It had just been waiting. The first returning human ship hovered like a silent sentinel between Earth and the alien fleet. It didn't speak. It didn't move aggressively. But its presence alone was enough to halt the enemy advance. The alien formations shifted in hesitation, unsure whether to fire or flee. Inside the remembrance, no one spoke. Even the AI systems that had gone dark now flickered with strange new patterns, as if they too were waiting for something beyond protocol. Then the tower on Europa let out one final pulse, sharp and piercing. It struck through the void like a bell rung at the beginning of something ancient. Across Earth, the effect was instant. Every human, young, old, even the comatose, paused, breath held, eyes wide. It was a shared moment of clarity, a wave of memory not from this life, but something older. Lena fell back against the wall, eyes unfocused. She saw visions not of battles or machines, but of before. Before Earth, before the Exodus, before they had forgotten who they were. She saw the first minds to leave the galaxy, building seeds in ice, in stone, in blood. She saw humanity not as it was, but as it could be. Not conquerors, not victims, but caretakers of memory. Rourke gripped the edge of the console. It's rewriting us, he said. Not our bodies, our minds, giving us back what was taken. At that moment, the alien fleet fired. Not at Earth, at the returning human ships. A massive wave of energy surged forward, but before impact, the sky itself seemed to fold. The rift above Earth expanded, and from within it, beams of pure energy lanced down and intercepted the attack. The light didn't burn, it absorbed. It pulled the energy apart like strings from a forgotten language. Then it fired back. But not at the aliens. It struck the tower. For a moment, it seemed like a betrayal. Even the crew flinched. The beam hit the top of the tower, and then something incredible happened. The structure didn't explode. It bloomed. Petals of metal unfolded outward like a flower opening under sunlight. Inside, at the heart of it all, was a shape no one could fully see. It wasn't solid. It wasn't light. It was a thought made real. And it spoke. You are not broken. You were protected. And now you are remembered. The alien fleet started to collapse. Ships twisted in place, lost cohesion, powered down. Not from damage, but surrender. Whatever they feared had already happened, and they could no longer stop it. But then the twist came. One of the returning human ships broke formation. It turned not toward the aliens, but toward Earth. Lena's screen flashed warnings. "Wait, it's charging something," Reyes said, wide-eyed. "That ship isn't protecting us. It's targeting the rift." Lena's heart dropped. They don't want the full memory restored, she realized. They think it's too much, too dangerous, even for us. They came to stop the aliens, but they also came to stop us. Inside the ship, alarms screamed. They had less than 30 seconds. Rourke looked around the bridge. "Do we have any way to stop that ship?" Reyes shook his head. "They're 100 years beyond us. We can't intercept. We can't jam. We've got nothing." Lena stepped forward. "We do have something." She walked to the override panel, the one tied directly to the tower's pulse network. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but the signal it broadcast was strong enough to shatter a mind. "If I can sync with the signal," she said, "I can send a memory burst, something the ship will recognize, something it can't ignore." "You could burn out your brain doing that," Rourke warned. She smiled sadly. "Then let's make it worth it." She reached out, pressed her hand to the panel, and let the signal in. The tower responded immediately, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. A new wave surged outward, not one of power, but of truth. A pure, unfiltered memory of who humanity once was and what it was meant to be. It struck the rogue ship just before it fired. And everything stopped. The ship drifted, slowly lowering its weapons. The rift above Earth pulsed once more, then stabilized. The light faded. Calm returned. Lena collapsed, unconscious, but breathing. The voice returned, one last time. You remembered just in time. The alien fleets began to withdraw. The returning human vessels moved into formation, no longer aggressors, but guardians. Earth remained untouched. But deep below the surface, beneath oceans and bedrock and forgotten ruins, something else stirred. Not hostile, not dangerous, just waiting. Because the memory wasn't complete yet. And somewhere in the stars, a second signal blinked to life. A message sent light years away. Tear open the silence. They remember now. The aftermath was strangely quiet. The stars above Earth no longer pulsed with weapons or tension. The alien fleets had retreated in full, some slipping into faster-than-light drives, others simply vanishing like dust blown away by wind. The rift above the planet lingered, steady now, no longer pulsing with energy. It looked like a scar in space, one that would never fully close, but no longer threatened to tear the sky apart. The rogue ship, the one that had almost fired on Earth, now floated dormant, its lights dimmed, its engines off. No further transmissions came from it. Whatever Lena had shown them, whatever part of our ancient humanity she had reached, had been enough to stop them. Aboard the Remembrance, the crew worked slowly and carefully. No one spoke loudly. Even the humming of systems returning to life seemed to respect the silence. Lena lay in the medbay, eyes closed, breathing steady. Monitors beside her flickered with odd signals, neural activity that didn't follow known patterns. The ship's medical AI said she was stable, but different, more active, as if her mind was now processing something too big for language. Rourke stood by the viewport, watching Earth slowly spin below. For the first time in days, there were no enemy signals, no countdowns, no warnings. Just stars. And quiet. Reyes stepped in beside him, a steaming cup in hand. "Still no response from the robe ship," he said softly. "And the tower on Europa, silent since the last pulse." Rourke nodded. "Like it did what it needed to do. And now it's resting again." Reyes hesitated, then asked, "Do you think they'll come back? The ones who left? The ones who remembered before we did?" "They already have," Rourke said, still looking at the stars. "Just not the way we expected. Not to rule us, not to destroy us. They were just trying to stop us from making the same mistake they made." "What mistake?" Reyes asked. Rourke turned to him. "Waking something before we were ready. Power without memory is chaos, but memory without power is just regret. We had to learn both." Later, Lena woke, slowly. Her eyes opened like dawn breaking, soft, then sharp. She sat up without needing assistance. She didn't look confused, just aware. "I saw it," she whispered, staring at the floor. "Not just us, not just Earth. I saw other seeds, other towers, buried in places we haven't even charted yet." Reyes leaned forward. "You mean there are more?" Lena nodded. "Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some are sleeping like this one. Others are already waking. But they're not threats. They're parts of us, scattered pieces of what we used to be. We were everywhere once, not as conquerors, as memory keepers, storytellers. We didn't build empires, we built echoes. So when we forgot, the galaxy would remember for us." Rourke's voice was quiet, and now the echoes are returning. Because we finally listened. News from Earth followed hours later. Reports from civilians echoed what the crew had felt. Shared visions, buried instincts surfacing. Some people remembered dreams they'd never had. Others painted symbols or spoke words they didn't understand. Scientists were baffled, but artists, they just nodded. It wasn't madness, it was awakening. Later, Lena woke, slowly. Her eyes opened like dawn breaking, soft, then sharp. She sat up without needing assistance. She didn't look confused, just aware. "I saw it," she whispered, staring at the floor. "Not just us, not just Earth. I saw other seeds, other towers, buried in places we haven't even charted yet." Reyes leaned forward. "You mean there are more?" Lena nodded. "Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some are sleeping like this one. Others are already waking. But they're not threats. They're parts of us, scattered pieces of what we used to be. We were everywhere once, not as conquerors, as memory keepers, storytellers. We didn't build empires, we built echoes. So when we forgot, the galaxy would remember for us." Rourke's voice was quiet, and now the echoes are returning. Lena met his gaze. "Because we finally listened." News from Earth followed hours later. Reports from civilians echoed what the crew had felt. Shared visions, buried instincts surfacing. Some people remembered dreams they'd never had. Others painted symbols or spoke words they didn't understand. Scientists were baffled, but artists? They just nodded. It wasn't madness, it was awakening. The United Coalition issued a statement calling for calm, unity, and further study of the events. For once, no one argued. All political debates fell silent. Whatever had happened wasn't something you could twist for advantage. It was too deep, too raw, too human. The tower on Europa remained where it stood, half buried in cracked ice, gleaming faintly like a lighthouse under snow. The remembrance stayed in orbit as a guardian, but it no longer felt like a warship, more like a witness. Humanity didn't need to conquer space anymore. It had already been part of it, just forgotten. A week later, Lena stood under Earth's sky again. A quiet field, windswept and green. No noise except birds. Her body felt heavier somehow, not in a bad way, in the way that you feel when you're grounded. She wasn't sure how much of her was still the same as before. Maybe all of it, maybe none of it. But she remembered, and she knew others would too. Rourke met her there, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning the sky. "You doing okay?" he asked. She smiled a little. "I think so. It's a lot, but it feels right." He nodded. "Command offered me a reassignment, something quieter. I think I'll take it." Lena tilted her head. "You retiring?" "Not exactly," he said. "I think I want to teach. There's going to be a lot of kids growing up in this new world. Might help if someone helps them understand where they came from." She looked at him. "That's what we are now, aren't we? Not soldiers, not explorers, just rememberers." "Yeah," Rourke said with a smile. "I think that's enough." And far above them, in the cold, quiet dark of space, the tower continued to hum. Not loudly, just softly, like a song half forgotten, drifting across time. Not demanding to be heard, but waiting patiently. Because now, humanity was listening. And for the first time in a very, very long time, they remembered who they were.